Welcome, dear listener. As the hush of night begins to settle around you and the stars begin to scatter their pale shimmer across the velvet sky, I invite you now to rest your thoughts and follow me. Let us drift far from the world you know, past the ticking of clocks and the hum of electric light, past the clamor of day and the weight of worry. Let us travel instead to a forest unlike any left in your world, a forest where trees still whisper in an ancient tongue, where petals never fall but simply fade into light, where the earth remembers the names of those long vanished, and where, in the stillest hollow of the deepest glade, sleeps a dragon, the last of her kind. Let your breath slow and your mind unspool like the curling smoke of an old fire. You are safe here. This is a tale woven not to startle but to soothe, not to awaken but to lull. Let us begin. Imagine, if you will, a forest not marked on any map. A forest so dense, so lush, so impossibly old that it no longer appears in the memories of men. Its canopy is a vaulted ceiling of silver-leafed branches, trembling in windless twilight. Its floor is covered in moss thick as velvet, glowing faintly under the faint blue of the twin moons. And nestled at its heart is a glade, ringed in stone and vine, where the air is warm even when snow whispers beyond its edges. Here, beneath a hill shaped like a sleeping beast, the last dragon dreams. Her name is Velindra. Once, her wings darkened the sun. Her breath could melt iron, and her voice was known to the kings of elves and the councils of stars. But time has folded over that age like mist over mirror. Now she sleeps, her body, coiled like a river of gold and ember, slumbers beneath roots that have grown around her like guardians. Her scales have dulled from flame bright to dusk-hued, yet they pulse still, like the heartbeat of a distant sun. She does not wake. Not truly. But sometimes, in the thinnest hours of night, when the veil between what was and what is softens, she breathes. And when she breathes, the forest remembers. That breath is not the fire you might imagine. It does not scorch or scream. It is a breath like summer heat rising from stone, slow, steady, and deep. A warmth that curls through root and branch, reminding the land of what it once was. You may not feel it, were you to walk here, but the flowers bloom brighter for it. The wind hushes its chatter, and the stars above, old as she is, seem to lean closer. For in that breath lies memory, the memory of the old world, the world before silence. Once there were many dragons, not wild beasts, but keepers of balance. They did not hoard gold, but song. They did not demand tribute, but offered protection, each aligned with a season, a star, or a sacred grove. Velindra was of the first flame, guardian of beginnings, born of the spark that lit the first dawn. Her wings bore markings not of fire, but of story, each scale etched with runes no longer spoken, only sung by mountain winds and waterfall spray. The elves called her Elariel Thanduin, the silent sister of the flame. The dwarves carved her name above the first forge. Even the trees, in their slow leafing and shedding, bent gently when she passed. But no being, not even one of flame and forever, escapes time's gentle erosion. One by one, her kin fell, to war, to betrayal, to forgetting. And so, when the last of the crystal cities fell, and the last star-aligned council dissolved, she came here, to sleep, not in sorrow, not in shame, but in trust, trusting that one day the land might dream again. In her slumber, the forest around her has become sacred. No hunter treads here, no axe bites bark. The birds do not nest, yet they circle the glade each morning as if in silent watch. Even the deer that wander too close slow their steps, ears flicking, reverent. Sometimes, just sometimes, a child lost in the forest will find their way to her resting place. And if their heart is light and their breath steady, they may see her chest rise once and fall once more. And they may hear, though none have spoken of it, a sound, not a roar, not a whisper, but something in between, a note held in stillness, a lullaby sung by heat itself. And if they carry that note in their hearts, the forest will always guide them home. Yet tonight, something is shifting. Beneath the silver soil and sacred root, Belindra's tail twitches. A tremble, barely more than a breath, ripples through the moss. A leaf falls from a tree that has not shed in 100 years, and somewhere in the distance a flame flickers into life, though no fire was lit. For the dream is stirring, and in the dark the dragon remembers, not in words, but in warmth, not in thought, but in story. She sees the faces of those long gone, the first elf who touched her snout in peace, the dwarf who cast a blade of starlight in her name, the human child who gave her a flower, not in fear, but in wonder. She sees them, she breathes, and the glade grows warmer, not burning, no, just remembering. Let yourself rest now, dear listener. Let your own breath mirror hers, long, slow, and soft. We have only begun the tale. There are more memories to follow, more echoes in the flame, more dreams to uncover. But for now, breathe with the dragon and know you are safe. Close your eyes now and imagine the world before speech, before steel, before kingdoms, before even the stars learned to shimmer. Imagine a time when the earth had only just finished its first breath, when the trees were still stretching upward for the very first time, and rivers were more curious than they were cold. This is the time Lindra dreams of. A time when the first elves walked freely beneath skies that held no names. In the dream that glows quietly behind her sleeping eyes, she returns to it, to that first meadow where the grass grew silver and the sky was always on the edge of twilight. Here, the elves had not yet chosen cities. They lived in song and silence, in dances made only for the stars. And it was here, in this meadow of dawn, that the dragons and the elves first met. Valindra remembers the feeling, not the exact day. Dragons did not mark time in days or moons, but in moments of meaning. And the moment she saw them, tall and graceful and glowing faintly with the breath of creation, was one of those. The elves were not afraid. They did not bow. Instead, they listened. And so did she. The first elf to approach her was named Celirian. His hair shimmered with green like willow leaves, and his eyes held the calm of deep lakes. He did not speak. He sang. It was a soft sound, like wind catching the edge of a hollow reed. It told her, "We mean you no harm." And she replied, not in speech, but in breath. A warm exhale that turned to light around his feet, swirling with flecks of gold. Thus began the oldest of pacts, not written, not sworn, merely lived. In time, the elves built not cities, but groves, cathedrals of woven branch and glowing stone, grown from seed and shaped by thought. They did not tame the land, they became part of it. Vailindra would fly overhead in the evenings, watching their lanterns bloom like stars across the forest floor. Sometimes she would rest her head near the edges of their gatherings, and the younglings would dance near her claws. She was not worshipped, she was trusted, and in this mutual trust the elves thrived. They spoke often of balance, of not taking more than was needed, of giving thanks to the roots and winds. It was a way of life that echoed the dragon's own creed. For dragons, you see, were keepers of ancient balances between fire and seed, between night and renewal. And in the elves, Valindra saw kindred spirits. She dreams now of the Grove of Vela, the first sanctuary of learning. Built at the base of the oldest tree in the forest, it was a place where dragon and elf alike came to share wisdom. There were no scrolls, only memory, no arguments, only songs. Here, Vailindra taught the elves the names of the stars not yet born. In turn, the elves taught her the names of the smallest things, the texture of frost, the sound of wind in hollow bark, the name of the flower that bloomed only in the shadow of her resting tail. Celirian would speak to her often in dreams, even when his body had grown old. He would press his forehead to her scales and hum the new names of the land, so she would always know. She kept them all. Even now, in her slumber, she murmurs them under her breath. But nothing golden stays, does it? Even in dreams, memory darkens with time. Vailindra recalls the fading, not sudden, not cruel, just inevitable. The first elves, despite their grace, were not immortal. Their lives stretched long as rivers, but even rivers meet the sea. And when Celirian passed into the forest beyond, Vailindra curled around his grove and sang a morning song that lasted 3 days and nights. From his resting place, a tree grew, silver-leaved, tall and wise. The elves called it Kailathar, the memory of Celirian. It stands still, in dream and in root, glowing faintly in the deepest part of the forest. Vailindra carries its seed in the pattern of her scales. Now, centuries later, she dreams of that tree. She dreams of the music that once filled the glades, of the way moonlight once danced on elven hair. She dreams of the lullabies the elven children used to hum, soft songs about stars and wings and warmth. And as she dreams, the moss around her thickens, the roots curl tighter in comfort. A warmth, like the memory of a campfire long gone, wraps around the glade. She breathes, and in her breath the first elves live again. Let your thoughts rest now. Let your breath mirror hers once more, soft and slow. You are in the forest. You are beside her, and you are not alone. The memory continues, the story deepens, and the dragon dreams on. Imagine now the hush before a rainstorm, a pause full of waiting, the scent of petrichor and unseen growth, the rustle of unseen wings. This is where Valindra's dream next leads us, not to a moment of birth or of mourning, but to a promise. Not a vow shouted or carved in stone, but one whispered in sap and smoke, sealed by leaf and scale. The time of the first elves was not endless. New clans had begun to rise, children of the forest who carried the same silver in their eyes, but also a glint of hunger, of curiosity. They had learned well from the dragons and the earth itself, but their songs began to quicken. They built higher, reaching toward the clouds. Their groves became sanctuaries, then cities. Stone crept into the trees. Magic, once woven gently into wind and water, was bent into sharper shapes, into shields and wards and flame. And still, the dragons watched. Not with fear, but with wondering. Would balance remain? Valindra remembers the Council of Antlers held beneath the seven-branched tree of Alarion. The last of the Elderglade dragons circled above, while the elf lords gathered below. Tensions had risen, not from malice, but misstep. A dragon's wing had scorched a new tower under construction. A young mage had tried to bind a storm spirit, and it screamed for days before the roots silenced it. Something had to change. And so they met, the ancient and the ascending. Valindra descended not in fury, but grace. Her body coiled gently beside the moss-rimmed dais, eyes luminous, unblinking. Across from her stood Liraen, a newly chosen archon of the High Elves, robed in midnight blue, her staff carved from living oak. There was no arguing, only listening. The forest leaned in to hear them speak. Valindra, voice slow and vast as tides, said, "You reach far now, with fire in one hand and seed in the other. Will you burn the earth to make it grow?" Liraen bowed her head. "No, but we must shape it, or be shaped. You taught us to listen. Now we ask, may we also lead?" It was not defiance, it was awakening. And the dragon saw this, so she gave them the gift of equal voice, not dominance, not obedience, a pact. The pact of leaf and scale was forged that night. In place of ink and quill, they used rainwater and sung breath. The forest bore witness. The pact said this: the dragons would guard the skies as watchers and weavers of storm. The elves would guard the land as caretakers and singers of growth. Neither would build without asking, neither would burn without mourning. Magic would remain a gift, not a weapon, and every century, one dragon and one elf would return to the Grove of Vaela to renew the promise. It was simple, and it held for a time. Vaelindra dreams now of the first renewal. 100 years after the pact was sung, she returned to the grove, where Thalin, Lirayan's grandson, awaited her. He brought her a woven garland of moon petals, flowers that only bloomed beneath her flight path. He laid it at her feet and whispered, "You are still in our songs." And she, in return, exhaled a breath so warm it brought a spring rain to the grove. The roots beneath them sighed with contentment. So the pact lived. It spread into lullabies, into stories told at elven firesides. Young dragons were hatched already humming the old melodies of unity. There was peace, but peace, like moss, grows slowly and can be torn swiftly. The dragons began to notice changes, subtle at first. A tree felled without apology, a stone tower piercing the nesting winds, then louder, the forging of silver arrowheads laced with sleep spells, new elven cities ringing themselves in wards that no longer welcomed wings. Not all elves, but enough, and Vaelindra, even now in her sleep, mourns the moment it frayed. She dreams of Violin, a young fire drake who flew too close to the moon court's spires. They feared his flame, though he came to watch the stars. He never returned. His scales were found, charred, shattered, and the grove grew silent. The next renewal never came. But here, in her dream, Vaelindra rewinds time. She returns to that earlier night when the pact was still new. She sees the lanterns swaying like golden fruit, hears the songs in the trees, deep, resonant, slow. She sees herself curl around the ancient tree of Alarion and breathe warmth into its roots. And she remembers. She remembers why they tried, because even when leaf and scale do not speak the same tongue, they still need the same sky. They still drink the same rain. They still fear the silence that follows war. So now, asleep beneath the soil and time, Vaelindra stirs. Not to rise, not yet, but to remember. In dreams, the pact still sings. In dreams, the forest still listens. And in the soft pulse of her breath, you too may find the rhythm of that ancient promise, slow, sacred, shared. Picture, if you will, a sky painted in silver and quiet. A dome of moonlight stretched over alabaster spires, reflecting in still, enchanted lakes. This was the domain of the moon court, the seat of elven mystics, moon priests, and the architects of luminous magic. It is here that the silence of Vaelindra's sleep grows troubled. Long ago, the moon court had been the most devoted keepers of the pact of leaf and scale. Their songs kept the stars in rhythm. Their spells harmonized with the tides. The high priestess, Elirea, once danced upon the canopy with dragon hatchlings in her arms. But magic, like moonlight, can cast shadows. As generations passed, the court grew distant. Their eyes turned from the forest floor and drifted upward towards celestial dominion. They no longer whispered to roots, but to stardust. They sought purity, perfection, a magic untethered from scale or soil. The turning point came with the prophecy. A comet, silver and forked like a serpent's tongue, crossed the sky. The moon seers declared it an omen that the dragon's fire would one day consume the stars, and only pure lunar wards could preserve elvenkind. The old songs were silenced. The pact declared obsolete, not by all elves, but by enough. Violindra's memories dimly trace the night her kin vanished. A young cloud drake, Eryx, had gone to renew the pact. He never returned. In his place came a storm. The forest wept that year. Trees died standing, magic faltered. Then came the walls. The moon court sealed its towers with star glass. They forged mirrored shields to reflect dragonfire. They bound wind spirits into silver collars, and they declared the dragons wild, elemental, ancient, a threat to ascended harmony. The betrayal was not one battle, but a slow unraveling. Dragons ceased flying over moonlands. Elven children stopped learning the old scale songs. And worst of all, the grove of Valor, once sacred meeting place, was desecrated. Its tree burned in a silent rite. Ashes swept into jars and sealed beneath the moon court's library. No more renewals, only remembrances. In Violindra's dream, this memory does not rage, it mourns. She sees Elirea one last time, standing at a balcony carved of pale quartz. Her eyes, once soft, now hard as frozen moonlight. We thank the dragons for their guardianship, she says, but the future is for those who reach the stars. Violindra does not reply. There is no cry, no flame, only silence. And as she turns away, the moon blinks once behind a drifting cloud. In sleep, the old dragon curls tighter, the weight of memory thick as snow. But dreams are not prisons. They are echoes. And somewhere, even now, a single sapling grows from the ashes of Valor's tree, hidden, quiet, but waiting for the wind to return, waiting to sing again. Imagine now a city that shimmered like a reflection in rippling water, Elarian, a name once sung in starlight and echoed in valleys, now barely whispered in the dreams of a sleeping dragon. This was the last great sanctuary of the elves, a city not built but grown, carved not by hand but by magic. Its towers were sculpted from living quartz, their branches spiraling like frozen fountains into the clouds. The streets wove through the boughs of ancient trees, glowing faintly with veins of living light. The air always smelled of rain and lilac bark, even in winter. To walk Elarian was to dream with open eyes. And now, in her slumber, Violindra walks it again. She remembers the day the song broke. It began with a hush, a stillness too sudden to be natural. The river that ran beneath Elarian's roots, the Elira, slowed until its waters became like glass. birds ceased their morning harmonies. The wind, usually warm and scented with jasmine, turned dry and still. And then came the sound. Not a roar, not a scream, but a shatter, like frost breaking beneath a single step. It echoed once, then again, then all at once. A chorus of cracking, splintering, sighing wood and crystal. The songline that had held Elarian aloft, woven by generations of spell weavers, unraveled like a frayed ribbon in the hands of time. From the roots upward, the city began to fall. Belindra had not reached Elarian in time. She had sensed its unraveling, yes, the way one might smell smoke long before seeing flame. She had soared across mountain ranges in desperation, cutting through starlight like an arrow. But she arrived only to witness the end. The crystal trees cracked and bent inward like grieving elders. The central spire, the heart spire, groaned as its branches coiled down, seeking ground that could no longer hold them. And amidst the collapse stood a figure cloaked in night. Malis, the warden of lost threads, a renegade sorcerer once cast out from the moon court. He had returned with a vengeance carved not in steel, but in silence. Malis had woven a null ward, a spell that did not destroy but erased. He believed that magic left unchecked was a tyranny, that the ancient compacts between dragon and elf, moon and root, bound them to a past too full of ghosts. He wished to begin again, and to do so he needed oblivion. The null ward flowed through Elarian like ink in water. It dissolved song, devoured memory, unspooled harmony. Towers wilted, statues wept dust, names of streets, of trees, of people, gone, as if never carved, never uttered. Only Velindra remained untouched, too ancient, too anchored in the bones of the world. And so she landed. She did not roar, she sang. It was a single note, held in the back of her throat. It shimmered against the null wood like morning against mist. Around her, what little remained of Elarian paused, stone trembling, leaves stilling. Malis turned, his eyes black as moonless tide pools. "You cannot hold back forgetting," he said. Belindra's reply was not in words, but in memory. She opened her wings, and from them spilled fragments of the past. Lullabies, whispered vows, laughter between trees, the first name given to the city by its founders. Malis faltered, not in pain, but in remembrance. The ward stuttered, and in that hesitation, the last priestess of Elarian, Maelis's own sister, Silarian, stepped forward. With trembling hands, she unbound her braid and sang the seed song, the root song of the city, one final time. It was enough. The ward collapsed inward, consuming Maelis and the darkness he had loosed. But the price was steep. Silarian's voice faded into light. Her body crumbled into ash. Elarian did not rise again, but it remained, not as a city, but as a grove. From the ruins, trees sprouted, pale and strong, shaped like the memory of towers. The river flowed anew. The air sang again, softly, like breath through a flute, and Vailindra curled beneath the heartroot and slept. She dreams of Elarion still, not of its fall, but of its echo. Imagine a hush so profound it seems to slow time itself. A forest where even the wind tiptoes, where roots hang like chandeliers from the ceilings of hollow caverns, and bioluminescent moss glows in the darkness like constellations trapped beneath the earth. This is where Vailindra sleeps. Beneath the heartroot of what was once Elarion, now a sacred grove of memory, she has made her final bed, coiled in a chamber of root and crystal, stone and silence. She dreams, and the forest above breathes in rhythm with her. It is said that dragons do not truly die, that they pass into dream, shedding the world like a snake's skin. In this place, this deep dream, Vailindra remembers not with her mind, but with her bones. Her sleep is not an escape, it is a communion. The chamber is vast and alive. The walls shimmer with veins of memory stone, a rare substance that captures echoes of emotion and history. As Vailindra sleeps, these stones pulse with shifting colors, soft blues for sorrow, warm ambers for joy, deep greens for peace. Around her, roots descend like the tendrils of ancient gods, wrapping her gently, not to trap but to cradle. Above her, a slow and constant drip of water marks time in a rhythm older than calendars. And in this sacred stillness, the world outside continues. Seasons pass. Snow dusts the trees above. Spring thaws them. The grove blooms, withers, blooms again. The saplings born of Elarion's fall stretch skyward, and deep below, Valindra's heart beats once every 100 years. Each beat echoes through the root system like a forgotten lullaby. Animals nest nearby. Spirits wander close, drawn by the dream heat radiating from the cavern. The grove becomes a place of healing, not by design, but by presence, and slowly others begin to come. The elves who survived the fall return in quiet pilgrimage. They build no city, they light no fires. They come barefoot, cloaked in silence, to kneel at the heartroot and place offerings, crystal shards from their old homes, scrolls of song, seed pods of trees that no longer grow anywhere else. They do not speak aloud, but Vailindra feels them. One day, a child comes, not elf, not dragon, a child born of mixed blood, half human, half something older. She bears a single scale as a pendant, a scale Vailindra gave to a prince long ago, a prince who vanished in the wars. She lays it upon the moss and whispers, "Wake up when the world is ready again." Vailindra does not stir, but her breath deepens. A warmth stirs in the moss, a faint tremor runs through the earth, and the heartroot pulses. Once. There are those who believe that in every age of forgetting, something ancient waits to be remembered, not in glory, not in vengeance, but in balance. The forest knows, the roots remember, and so does she. In the depths, Vailindra dreams of skies she has not flown in eons. songs, of names she once whispered to hatchlings, of melodies shared between mountain and flame. She dreams of peace, not the absence of war, but the presence of wholeness. She dreams of waking, and still she sleeps, not in death, but in becoming. Night deepens over the ancient forest. The stars have returned to their places, no longer falling or flaring, but watching, steady, soft and silent. A low wind sighs through the canopies, brushing the leaves with fingers of twilight. And beneath it all, beneath the moss and stone, beneath roots old enough to remember the first fire, something stirs. The heartroot pulses again, twice, then thrice. A rhythm is forming, not loud, not sudden, but insistent, like breath remembered after weeping, like footsteps before dawn. Vailindra stirs. Her breath comes in a slow, warm exhale that curls the moss. The cavern, once cool and hushed, begins to hum with a golden stillness. Crystals flicker in response, shedding tears of light. And outside, the stars begin to blink, not in farewell, but in recognition. The forest knows. Birdsong does not return. It waits. Predators still themselves, ears pricked. Even the river pauses, eddies hesitating over smooth stones. Then, a rustle, a rise, a sound like silk through water, or a bell rung beneath snow. Wings, ancient, massive, alive. The cavern roof splits open like petals, roots part like curtains drawn by unseen hands, and Vailindra rises. Her scales catch no moonlight, they emit it. Her wings unfurl slowly, carefully, as if remembering their own breadth. Dust and memory shake loose from every joint. Her eyes open, twin wells of molten silver, deep enough to drown time. And above, the sky sighs. She does not roar, she does not blaze, she glides through the newly parted canopy, past the saplings of Elarian, into the air that once bore her kin, and the world watches, not with fear, but with the kind of reverence one reserves for first snow or last light. Villagers on the edge of the forest look up and forget their quarrels. A moon priestess drops her scepter and weeps. An old elf hums a tune thought lost. And somewhere, in the silent corners of the world, other dreams stir, other ancients remember, other wings begin to twitch. For Vailindra is not fire or fury, she is memory and renewal. She is the echo of oaths kept in darkness, the breath between stories, and the whisper that wakes us not in fright, but in wonder. She flies, not to reclaim, not to rule, but to remind. That magic endures, that peace sleeps, but never dies, that even the last dream can still awaken.